Sometimes often we criticise outside when we never look at home. And sometimes, I know myself, I'm heavily critical of Kildare County Council because I want to make sure Kildare County Council are getting the maximum grants, maximum funding available. And then when someone comes in here and criticises the Minister because she's not given the money is available there. If Westmeath County Council would get off its rear end and go and seek that money, rather than having to send this deputy in here to pontificate in front of the Minister about untruths, and get Westmeath County Council more proactive.
Know your facts, Deputy. Know your facts before you start running down Westmeath County Council. Know your facts.
Send this deputy in
on a point of order, Chairman. On a point of order, a deputy can't come in and criticise Westmeath County Council without knowing their facts.
Well,
I
can.
On 3 separate occasions.
Sorry, Deputy, it's not a point of order. Deputy, it's not a point of order. Okay. Deputy, that's not a point of order.
Westmeath County Council also has a responsibility to provide funding themselves, matching funding.
Deputy,
Westmeath County Council has a responsibility to provide matching funding too as well.
No, Deputy,
they have to allocate themselves within their own budget. So the fault is with Westmeath County Council for not allocating sufficient funding within their own budget. Anyway, Minister, I'm delighted here to speak. I just want to correct some misnomers that were coming from Deputy Troy on the far side. The real issue here is, and we're here to talk about social housing and homelessness, and the real issue is there is a housing crisis across all the board, and it's a housing crisis for people who have put by some money to get a mortgage that they can't actually get a house because there's no houses being built currently in the state. When one looks at the number of houses that have been built over the last number of years, there has been a total collapse of the construction industry. And as a result of that, that is putting pressure on the rental market. That is putting pressure on people who are on social welfare, who are on rent looking for rent allowance, who can't actually compete with the people who are actually in jobs, in employment, who are actually looking for a mortgage to get their own house. So it's not just a social housing crisis, it's not just a homeless crisis, it's a national housing crisis across all the sectors. So we have to look at it as a holistic approach rather than just a sectorial approach within the housing sector. And I think it's important that we come from that approach, then we can look at and trying to find solutions all across the board. From my perspective, and I've been consistently talking about this in here, Part 5 has been the downfall of the housing market in this country. I voted against it in Kildare County Council. I had strong views on it in the fact that it built houses but didn't create communities. I think I've said that before to you, Minister, about the fact that it was so important that we build communities, that people can have a sense of ownership of the area in which they're living in. So Part 5 destroyed that completely. From my own viewpoint, in 1997-98, we were doing a development plan in Kildare, and we were looking at, for people who were looking for lands to be zoned, we were looking for a 20% contribution, and the 20% was a land contribution. And the council then could decide what to do with that 20% contribution, whether they could build houses, whether they could allocate it for recreational facilities, whether they could build sports fields, whether they could give it for a school. These are things that build communities. Instead, what happened, Part 5 came in and it built houses. And it was the be-end and all solution for people on social welfare, people who couldn't actually get accommodation. And this was the be-end and all of the whole lot solution. So when the housing construction collapsed completely, no houses were being constructed. And as a consequence of that, the implications from a Part 5 perspective was that the local authorities were not getting any houses to house people. And as a result of that, no houses were being built. And as I said before, we have to look at this as a holistic approach. There are a couple of things I would just make a suggestion on, Minister. There's an 80% windfall tax that was brought in under the NAMA legislation. I think we have to seriously look at that and make a change in that. Land prices, actually, about 2 years ago, I saw a piece of land up for sale, and it was zoned for development, and the sale on it was, the advertising put it as zoned land, potential agricultural. So when one looked at it from that perspective, we see the collapse in the price of zoned land, and having an 80% windfall tax will discourage people actually in certain areas to have land been changed from being agricultural to zoned land. That's something we have to look at. We've also to look at the McHugh case, which is a Supreme Court judgment, which McHugh was from my own area, Naas, and he was...
Thank you, Deputy.
Yeah, he was responsible for the fact that we couldn't continue on the practice that we're going on in Kildare, acquired land through this 20%. The other thing too as well, I'd just like to say, and I have a minute or two from Deputy Farrell, just on one other thing, and I've spoken to you about before, is having shovel-ready projects within counties. And I think, Minister, you should write to counties to ask them to be more progressive on that. Instead of waiting for the money to be allocated and then starting on a project, let them have most of the process, the planning process, done beforehand, so that as soon as the money is allocated, that they can actually start building. So I would encourage local authorities for that. And lastly, is just there are a number of houses out there, and local authorities say there's only a small number of houses within their county who are not available for rent because they need to be renewed. There's actually probably more than that. We need to have a stronger renewal policy so as to get these houses back on stream so that they can be used up again. So, Minister, as I said, there are 6,104 people on the housing list in Kildare as of this morning. As my colleagues and most of the colleagues say, we're in a crisis, but it's actually a holistic crisis rather than a sectorial crisis. And if we take a holistic approach on it, we can find a solution to it. Thanks very much, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Farrell has 3 minutes.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and